It's time to make some Book of the Month predictions. Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney. On this channel, I talk about books and writing. Today, we're going to talk about what I think the Book of the Month picks for February 2024 are going to be. I'm going to apologize. First of all, my lighting is very weird. And that is because I'm filming this at 8:30 in the morning and it is like very dark outside because we are having an ice storm at the moment. So I have a lot of artificial lighting going on and so my shadows are very weird. Sorry if you're new here. This is not usually what my lighting looks like. I don't usually look like a ghost glowing next to a bookcase, which would be a very different vibe of a YouTube channel. A lot of months I like to guess what the Book of the Month picks are going to be, and I'm going to do it for February. I have my trusty new laptop on my lap. If you've been here before, I usually have to sit at my desk because my old laptop was basically a desktop and couldn't be unplugged or really jostled in any way. But I got a new computer for Christmas from my husband, and so I can sit in front of my pretty bookcases. This is going to be one of my Book of the Month prediction videos in which I don't have a ton of titles. I just picked one or two for each category rather than how sometimes I'll pick like 5. And let's just go ahead and get started. We're going to start with historical fiction, and my first guess is The Women by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna is a multiple Book of the Month author. Like, they've picked her several times, and I'm going to blank on the title right now. Her last pick was a Book of the Year contender. I think that was her last book. In 2022, maybe. It wasn't for 2023. And 4 Winds, is that what it's called? We're going to find out because I'm going to do some research and put a picture of it right here for you. But The Women currently has 3,163 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.68 average, which is insane, I say as an author. It's coming out on February 6th, right at the beginning of the month, and it's historical fiction. I'm just going to give you a quick blurb. It's about a 20-year-old nursing student named Frances. She goes by Frankie McGrath, and she is from Southern California and decides to go to Vietnam in the nursing corps. Her brother has also been, I don't know if he's been drafted or is like volunteers to be in Vietnam, but he's also there. So this is going to be a Vietnam War story, which I do think is interesting because I feel like we get so many World War II stories, but not a lot of other wars the United States has been involved in, or just like other countries have been involved in. So I think this would be an interesting one. I've never read a Kristen Hanna because I started to read The Winter Garden, which I think is probably, you might even be able to see it behind me. Oh no, I actually think I sold it because I know I was never going to finish. And it was so sad that I could not read it. So if this is picked, it's not going to be my choice because I just can't do those terribly, terribly sad books. My next pick is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. It currently has 212 ratings on Goodreads and a 4.09 average, and it's coming out on February 27th, so the end of the month. It has 2 different timelines, the first being Colorado in 1864, and it's about a Native child who survives the Sand Creek Massacre, and then it is taken to like one of those schools to assimilate Native children into white American life. It looks like it'll be pretty sad. And then the other timeline is Oakland 2018, and it's about a young woman who's of Native descent, and she is leading her family through the tragedy of her nephew surviving a shooting. Both timelines have a lot to do with finding yourself in your Cheyenne heritage and overcoming terrible trauma. I think this would be a really cool pick because I don't think I've ever read a book like this that takes 2 different timelines of what it means to be Native in the United States. Let's move on to thrillers. I have 2 thriller picks. The first is Everyone Who Can Forgive Me Is Dead by Jenny Hollander. This follows Charlie Colbert, who, it says like 9 years ago, she fled after a terrible event happened at her school, and she was like one of the witnesses. It was such a bad event that now it's like known in public as the Scarlet Christmas, so I'm gonna assume this is like a mass shooting event or maybe a terrible murder or something that happened at, it says it's a graduate school. And now we're 9 years later, and she has a very normal life, and she's kind of left it all in the past. But one of her former classmates is making a movie about it, and she feels like it's going to shatter her entire life, but she'll do anything not to let that happen. This is listed as a thriller mystery horror, so I'm not sure how good of a person Charlie Colbert is going to end up being, or if she's going to be a bad person. It currently has 591 ratings on Goodreads on a 3.71 average, and it's coming out on February 6th. The next thriller pick I have is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. It currently has 580 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.28 average. This one has 2 narrators. The first is Eve, who is a teacher in like a local high school, and she teaches math, and she like has a good life. And then a new school year starts, and she is the student named Addie in her classroom. Addie was the center of this crazy scandal that took place the year before at their school, and she feels like she doesn't want her in her class, she doesn't want her anywhere near her, and like that she's gonna mess things up for her this year. Addie is our other narrator, and it says that nobody knows the real Addie, nobody knows the secrets she's having, and how if anybody found them out, it could completely destroy her, and she'll do anything to keep those secrets from coming out. I feel like that sounds like a cool teacher-student thriller that hopefully doesn't have any weird romantic relationship vibes, because I'm not really into those kinds of stories. But it comes out on February 6th. It's 400 pages. It feels like it'd be a perfect book of the month pick. Okay, so let's move on to contemporary fiction. My first pick for that is Brooklyn by Tracy Brown. It currently has 88 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.3 average, and it's coming out February 27th. This is about Brooklyn Melody James, who is raised by a man who kind of like scams the church out of money, and she becomes a hustler, and you follow her as through her childhood, idolizing her father and really disliking her mother. And then she kind of moves on to New York City and becomes even more of a hustler and just tries to steal money from people and trick people out of basically their possessions. She meets a man named Hassan probably, and they have an affair, and then she gets out of there. And then it looks like it might become sort of a thriller because she's on her way out of New York into DC and Maryland. And the last line of the blurb is, as she faces her killer and her fate, Brooklyn's stunned that justice comes from the least likely place. So this feels like kind of like it's going to be one of those books that mixes like lit fic, contemporary fic, and with thriller vibes. Seems like a good big book of the month pick. My second choice for contemporary fiction is A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. She wrote 7 Days in June, which was not a book of the month pick, but I was like really surprised it wasn't. So like for some reason in my brain, I was like, that was a book of the month pick. And then I went through their website and it wasn't, but for some reason I like definitely thought that had been a pick, which is why I'm going to say I think this one might be a pick. Currently, it's got 347 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.26 average, and it's coming out on February 6th, right at the beginning of the month, 352 pages. Perfect length for this genre. I'm going to read you the whole blurb for this one because I think this is actually going to be picked and get you excited for it. Ricky Wilde has many talents, but being a Wilde isn't one of them. As the impulsive artistic daughter of a powerful Atlanta dynasty, she's the opposite of her famous socialite sisters. Where they're long stem roses, she's a dandelion, an adorable bloom that's actually a weed born to float wherever the wind blows. In her bones, Ricky knows that somewhere a different, more exciting life awaits her. When regal nonagenarian, I think is how you say it, someone in their 90s, Ms. Della invites her to rent the bottom floor of her Harlem brownstone, Ricky jumps at the chance for a fresh beginning. She leaves behind her family, wealth, and chaotic romantic decisions to realize her dream of opening a flower shop. And just beneath the surface of her new neighborhood, the music, stories, and dazzling drama of the Harlem Renaissance still simmers. One evening in February, as the heady, curiously off-season scent of night-blooming jasmine fills the air, Ricky encounters a handsome, deeply mysterious stranger who knocks her world off balance in the most unexpected way. Set against the backdrop of modern Harlem and the Renaissance glamour, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde is a swoon-worthy love story of two passionate artists drawn to magic, romance, and the opportunity of New York, and whose lives are uniquely and irreversibly linked. Okay, so this is down as, here are the genres book of the month has it in. Romance, fiction, contemporary, adult, historical fiction, contemporary romance, historical, chick lit, African-American, and magical realism. So first of all, like, look at this cover. This cover is beautiful. It is February, so I think we're going to be like a little like romance love story heavier because it's February and there's Valentine's Day. And who doesn't love a theme? So I do definitely think this is going to be picked. And when it said magical realism, that had me because I love magical realism. And if the magical realism is going to go the way I think it's going to go, I think that I would actually like super love this book. Now we're going to move into straightforward romance. And the first I have is Allie Hazelwood's Bride. Now, Book of the Month has released 2 clues so far. They said they're going to release more. They're not out yet when I'm filming this. The first is the word love written in kind of a sharp font similar to Bride on this cover, and it's in black and red. So I do think this is a pick because of the clue. This is like legit the first Allie Hazelwood book that I've been interested in. I'm not really like super a contemporary romance reader, and when I do read contemporary romance, they tend not to be like as rom-com-y as book of the month usually picks. They tend to be more like straight contemporary. So, but I'm going to read you the blurb so you can see why I would actually be into this one. Oh, and it currently has 1,500 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.28 average, and it's 410 pages, which is a little long for book of the month, but it's Allie Hazelwood. They love her. And it's coming out on February 6th. Misery Lark, the only daughter of the most powerful vampire councilman in the Southwest, is an outcast again. Her days of living in anonymity, why can't I say it? Among the humans are over. She has been called upon to uphold a historic peacekeeping alliance between the vampires and their mortal enemies, the Wares, and she sees little choice but to surrender herself in the exchange again. Wares are ruthless and unpredictable, and their alpha, Lo Moreland, is no exception. He rules his pack with absolute authority, but not without justice, and unlike the Vampire Council, not without feeling. It's clear from the way he tracks Misery's every movement that he doesn't trust her. If only he knew how right he was. Because Misery has her own reasons to agree to this marriage of convenience, reasons that have nothing to do with politics or alliances and everything to do with the only thing she's ever cared about. And she's willing to do whatever it takes to get back what's hers, even if it means a life alone in Were territory, alone with the wolf. So I obviously really like werewolf romance stories. I'm not as into vampires, but probably because I was so into vampires when I was younger. And I wasn't a Twilight girly. I'm too old for that. I'm not too old for that. I read them. But I am like an Angel Buffy girly. So I've been like off that. But I do really love the Underworld movies, which have a vampire werewolf romance, which I love so much. If you like the Underworld movies, which I know right now I'm talking to like maybe 3 people, you should read my series, The Wolves of Luven, because I totally based the werewolves in that off of Michael Corwin's character. Pitch for myself over. So we'll see. I mean, it's got a trope everybody loves, marriage of convenience. It's got mortal enemies. I'm gonna guess it has enemies to lovers. And I'm pretty positive it's the pick because of the clue. My next romance guess is also one of the clues. So they gave us 2 versions of the word love, and one was the black and red that made me think of Bride. And this one was like all the colors of the rainbow, which first I thought might mean that it's a queer love story, which it could. But this could be Us by Kennedy Ryan, which is the sequel to Before I Let You Go, which was an add-on, is coming out March 5th. And I felt like maybe this is going to be an early pick, like an early release pick for Book of the Month, since they did do Before I Let You Go. It's February. This cover isn't rainbow, but it's very colorful. I mean, the back is a little bit rainbow. So that's where I am. And if this isn't picked in February, just roll this on over to March, because I do think this is going to be picked at least for an add-on. It currently has 1,212 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.65 average. It is 416 pages, which again is a little thick for a romance, but because they already did the first one in the series, I don't think they'll care. And it comes out on March 5th. Here's a quick blurb. Soledad Barnes has her life all planned out, because of course she does. She plans everything. She designs everything. She fixes everything. She's a domestic goddess who's never met a party she couldn't host or a charge she couldn't lead. The one with all the answers and the perfect vinaigrette for a summer salad. But none of her varied talents can save her when catastrophe strikes, and the life she's built with the man she was supposed to be with forever goes poof in a cloud of betrayal and disillusion. But there is no time to pout or sulk or even grieve the life she's lost. She's too busy keeping a roof over her daughter's heads and food on the table. And in the process of saving them all, Soledad rediscovers herself. From the ashes of a life burnt to the ground, something bold and new can arise. But then an unlikely man enters the picture, the forbidden one, the one she shouldn't want but can't seem to resist. She's lost it all before and refuses to repeat her mistakes. Can she trust him? Can she trust herself? After all she's lost and found, can she be brave enough to make room for what could be? So this is listed as first romance, then contemporary. So I have faith in Kennedy Ryan that this is not going to be like a more like a chick lit. I think it's going to be a straightforward romance with a woman getting a second chance at love. Now let's move to fantasy. My first fantasy pick is The Foxwife by Yang Zi Chu. It currently has 328 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.26 average. It's 400 pages and coming out on February 13th. I read her other book, The Ghost Bride, which was not a Book of the Month pick. I read it a long time ago, way before I started BookTube, but very magical and very good. This is set in Manchuria in 1908, and it's obviously fantasy, but it looks like it's like going to be like a historical fantasy with a lot of folklore woven in, which is my favorite kind of fantasy. A young woman is found frozen in the snow. Her death is clouded by rumors of foxes involved, which are believed to lure people by transforming themselves into beautiful men or women. Bao, a detective with a reputation for sniffing out the truth, is hired to uncover the dead woman's identity. Since childhood, Bao has been intrigued by the fox gods, yet they've remained tantalizing out of reach until perhaps now. Meanwhile, a family that owns a famous Chinese medicine shop can cure ailments, but not the curse that afflicts them. Their eldest sons die before their 24th birthdays. Now the only grandson of the family is 23. When a mysterious woman enters their household, their luck seems to change, or does it? Is their new servant a simple young woman from the north, or a fox spirit bent on revenge? Okay, I love the folklore of foxes being shapeshifters, and Neil Gaiman wrote or maybe he just illustrated it, a graphic novel that now, hold on one second, I'm gonna look it up. It was part of the Dream Hunters, and it was the story of like a fox shifter and Buddhist monk, maybe. I read this literally in like 2007, so I'm totally blanking on it, but I really liked it, and I love stories of fox shapeshifters. So this would be a good one that I would wanna buy. My next pick for fantasy is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is book 1 in the Shadow of Leviathan series. It currently has 748 reviews on Goodreads with a 4.3 average. It is 432 pages and is coming out on February 6th. This sounds very high fantasy, very cool. In Daratana's most opulent mansion, a high imperial officer lies dead, killed to all appearances when a tree spontaneously erupted from his body. My interest is piqued. Even in this canton at the borders of the empire where contagions abound and the blood of the Leviathans works strange magical changes, it's a death at once terrifying and impossible. Called in to investigate this mystery is Anna Dolabra, an investigator whose reputation for brilliance is matched only by her eccentricities. At her side is her new assistant, Dinius Cole. Din is an engraver magically altered to possess a perfect memory. This is a lot of fantasy stuff that sounds cool. His job is to observe and report and act as his superior's eyes and ears, quite literally. In this case, as among Anna's quirks are her insistence on wearing a blindfold at all times and her refusal to step outside of the walls of her home. Din is most perplexed by Anna's ravenous appetite for information and her mind's frenzied leaps, not to mention her cheerful disregard for propriety and the apparent joy she takes in scandalizing her young counterpart. Yet, as the case unfolds and Anna makes one startling deduction after the next, he finds it hard to deny that she is indeed the Empire's greatest detective. As the two close in on a mastermind and uncover a scheme that threatens the safety of the Empire itself, Din realizes he's barely begun to assemble the puzzle that is Anna, and wonders how long he'll be able to keep his own secrets safe from her piercing intellect. So it says like it's got a Holmes-Watson style pairing and a labyrinthine plot and a haunting and wholly original fantasy world. So that sounded like a cool mix of both fantasy and thriller, and that sounds like a really interesting world. I'm not surprised it's going to be the first in a series. I'm sure that there are going to be a bunch of mysteries for these two to solve. My next is kind of a long shot, and you'll see why. It's The Book of Love by Kelly Link. I have read a book by Kelly Link. She's in My True Love Gave to Me. And now it's bothering me that I think she wrote The Lady and the Fox, but I'm going to check. I know she has a book in this, which is a compendium of young adult love stories that have to do with the winter holidays. Yeah, she wrote The Lady and the Fox, which I really like. We've referenced my love of foxes not once, but twice in this video. So The Book of Love is her new book. It's got 157 ratings on Goodreads and a 3.66 average. It's coming out on February 8th. It is 640 pages, which is quite long. And so I'm not sure if it will be picked, but let me just give you the blurb. Late one night, Laura, Daniel, and Mo find themselves beneath the fluorescent lights of a high school classroom almost a year after disappearing from their hometown, the small seaside community of Lven, Massachusetts, having long been presumed dead, which in fact they are. With them in the room is their previously unremarkable high school music teacher who seems to know something about their disappearance and what has brought them back again. Desperate to reclaim their lives, the three agree to the terms of the bargain their music teacher proposes. They will be given a series of magical tasks. While they undertake them, they may return to their families and friends, but they can tell no one where they've been. In the end, there will be winners and there will be losers. But the resurrection has attracted the notice of other supernatural figures, all with their own agendas. As Laura, Daniel, and Mo grapple with the pieces of the lives they left behind, and Laura's sister Susanna attempts to reconcile what she remembers with what she fears, these mysterious others begin to arrive, engulfing their community in danger and chaos, and it becomes imperative that the teens solve the mystery of their deaths to avert a looming disaster. So this is listed as fantasy, fiction, mystery, but also adult. Even though it's about high school students, it is listed as an adult novel. Goodreads doesn't put trigger warnings, so I don't know if it's adult because of a certain thing that happens with them, because the whole thing about her sister trying to reconcile what she remembers, which makes me think she was somewhat part of the day that they all died. But I think that sounds very cool. And The Lady and the Fox by Kelly Link was a really good short story, so I'm excited. Maybe it'll be an add-on. I don't know if they've ever done a pick that's 640 pages long. I know they've done some add-ons that are that long. I have 2 more books left that are not in normal categories chosen, but I still wanted to highlight them. The first is My Side of the River by Elizabeth Caramillo Guiertiez. Again, I'm so sorry, my Spanish accent is awful. This is a memoir, which every once in a while Book of the Month does pick a memoir. It currently has 132 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.36 average. It's coming out on February 13th. It's 272 pages. Born to Mexican immigrants south of the Rilito, this is going to be horrible for me with pronouncing Spanish, Rilito River in Tucson, Arizona, Elizabeth had the world at her fingertips as she entered her freshman year of high school as the #1 student. But suddenly, Elizabeth's own country took away the most important right a child has, a right to have a family. As her parents' visas expired, they were forced to return to Mexico, leaving Elizabeth responsible for her younger brother as well as her education. Determined to break the cycle of being a statistic, she knew that even though her parents couldn't stay, there was no way she could let go of the opportunities the U.S. could provide. Armed with only her passport and sheer teenage determination, Elizabeth became what her school would eventually describe as an unaccompanied homeless youth, one of the thousands of underage victims affected by family separation due to broken immigration laws. And then the last line, which is really beautiful, I have to read to you. It's also at its core a love story between a brother and a sister who, no matter the cost, is determined to make the pursuit of his own dreams easier than it was for her, which I love. Sibling stories. I just do. I'm the oldest of 5 and I'm very close with all my siblings, and I think that's part of it. That sounded fantastic. They don't often pick memoirs to be one of the main 5 to 7 picks, but there are a lot of memoirs that are add-ons, so I thought maybe that would be an add-on if it's not a main pick. And then my last choice is a very random choice, and I don't know if it'll be picked, but if it does get picked, it'll get picked as an add-on. It's called 14 Days, An Unauthorized Gathering, and the editor is Margaret Atwood, a la The Handmaid's Tale et al. It's got a lot of famous authors in it. So it's a collection of short stories. It's coming out on February 6th. It only has 88 ratings, which is so weird to me, with a 3.5 average. I'm surprised this doesn't have way more ratings, but maybe they didn't do a big arc explosion. It's 384 pages. So it's about, the premise is that it's 1 week into the COVID-19 shutdown, and it's the tenants of a Lower East Side apartment building in Manhattan have begun to gather on the rooftop and tell stories. With each passing night, more and more neighbors gather, bringing chairs and milk crates to sit on. Gradually, the tenants, some who have barely spoken to each other before, become real neighbors. So here are the authors in it. Margaret Atwood, Douglas Preston, Celeste Ng, Emma Donoghue, Dave Eggers, John Grisham, Diana Gabaldon, Ishmael Reed, Meg Wolitzer, Luis Alberto Urrea, James Shapiro, Sylvia Day, Mary Pope Osborne, Monique Trong, Hampton Sides, R.L. Stein, blast from the past, R.O. Kwan, David Byrne, Louise Erdrich, Neil Gaiman, Rachel Kushner, Candice Bushnell, Nora Roberts, Scott Turow, Tommy Orange, and more. If that list doesn't say this was edited by a powerhouse like Margaret Atwood, who could get all of her writing friends to write a short story, I don't know what does. That list is insane. So I feel like that could maybe be an add-on. I don't know. Those are my predictions for the Book of the Month picks. Here are my legit choices. I always pick 5 to 7. I'm going to pick 6 today. I think The Women by Kristen Hanna is going to be a main pick. I think the thriller choice is going to be The Teacher by Frida McFadden. I think the contemporary choice is going to be A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams, or it's going to be a magical realism choice. I'm not sure how Book of the Month is going to classify it. For romance, I think The Bride by Elliot Hazelwood, and then This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, I think will either be a romance pick or an add-on. And for fantasy sci-fi, I think The Fox Wife by Yang Zi Chu is going to be the pick, mainly because I want it to be. Those are my 6 main choices. I think that the others all have chances to be add-ons or picks, but that's what I'm going with. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks for hanging out for this long. As always, I put a link to my Book of the Month code in the description. If this sounds like a service you would be interested in signing up for, you can get your first book for $5. And If you want to let me know you made this far in the comments, please tell me which of these books you hope Book of the Month picks, or which book you've got your eye on that I didn't talk about that you're really hoping they pick. If you want to let me know you made it this far and don't want to write words, please give me there's not really a sleet emoji, is there? Or an ice storm emoji, so why don't you give me a cloud or a snowy cloud or a snowflake emoji, because we are really in it in January in here in the North. As always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.